humans, we're faced with different kind of experiences, and sometimes they leave a lasting memory we never get to forget. And we've also heard of people who have blamed some of their predicaments or their bad behaviors on some things that happened to them when they were children. But how much does your childhood affect your adulthood? I'm Nonso and I welcome you to another episode on Catholic Faith Forum. Today, we'll be discussing a very special topic, and with me here is a guest I'll be introducing after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Catholic Faith Forum, and today I'm here with Mrs Pauline Omoera. She started her journey as a teacher in the nursery, primary, and secondary school, and went on to become a guidance counselor. And she's doing a lot of great things. She's a marriage counselor as well with Money, Honey, Enablers. You're welcome, Miss Pauline.
Thank you very much.
And today we'll be discussing healing from childhood trauma, because she has worked with a lot of children. And I really think that this topic needs to be discussed so that people would understand how to grow up from their childhood experiences. So what is trauma to you? I like your breath.
Nearly every Nigerian has gone through one form of trauma or the other.
True.
But we can say that trauma is a distressing event or experience that an individual goes through that impacts negatively on how he can cope and function as a complete human being.
Okay. Are there types of trauma?
Yes, we have different types of trauma.
Okay, what are they?
We have some form of trauma that happens once in a lifetime, just one-off, and psychologically we call them acute trauma.
Okay.
And then we have the chronic kind of trauma that happens multiple times. We have trauma kind of like, for instance, as a marriage counselor, I know that most women go through
trauma in their marriages.
Chronic kind of trauma, you know. For example, if we have a violent kind of partner,
okay,
you can imagine an everyday incident or
very
monthly
traumatic
incident. So those are the kind of trauma we call chronic trauma. Then we have the one that is complex. We have traumas that you don't see it coming. It happens, and then another one follows suit. For example, a child going through a situation where the parents are getting divorced.
Okay.
And then you are trying to deal with that distressing event and still goes to school and faces bullying.
Yeah.
So those are the kind we call multiple kind of trauma. How do you handle that is coming from the home front and handling
that's
the peers?
School.
So those are the kind we call multiple kinds of trauma. And then the last one that I want to talk about is the one that affects some of us as counselors.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. Even counselors go through trauma.
Of course, we do. We do. I remember the first time I started my practice as a counselor, school counselor. And now children come to me, oh, Mrs. Omoera, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. And sometimes you have cases that come to you. By the time you go through it, you yourself as a counselor, you become traumatized. I remember going home and telling my husband, I don't think I want to do this anymore.
Wait.
So that one is what we call secondary kind of trauma.
Okay.
Because you're not the one going through it, but because you know. And as a counselor, the first attribute you have to have in you is empathy.
Okay.
So you empathize with their issues, but it's affecting you indirectly.
Okay, but in professionalism, are you not supposed to take yourself out of that situation, even when you're trying to be empathetic?
You are supposed to take yourself out. But then you still have to feel their pain. So it's kind of ambiguous, you know. You're trying to feel in their shoes, trying to understand them so that you don't judge.
Okay.
That's the only way. So you end up feeling this problem too. And then, you know, most counselors have to have counselors they run to. Yes.
Then those counselors need to have counselors as well. So it's just like a cycle.
It's a cycle.
Wow.
You cannot handle all of these issues. You're not a Superman. Sometimes you take a break from what you're doing so you can calm down. And most people don't understand. So sometimes you have frustrated counselors.
I like that. Let's go on the short break. When we come back, we'll talk more on this topic. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Catholic Faith Firm. I am Nonso, and today we're discussing healing from childhood trauma. I have here with me a counselor, Mrs Pauline Omoera. So we're talking about children and how they go through traumatic experiences. So how can trauma affect a child?
Children, trauma. Most children, because their brains are not, definitely a child is
Not fully formed, okay.
between the ages of 0 to 18 years. Now the brain is not fully formed to make certain decisions. And so they do not know how to identify nor express their emotions, not to talk of managing these emotions.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, you see a child who has gone through a traumatic experience, been moody. A child who is playful, happy, just gets withdrawn, quiet. What is wrong with the child? The mother, the father could not explain. Then some of them, that anger, you know,
Very
they lash out.
yeah,
They're violent, rude. There was one serious example where the girl was being rude to a particular uncle, insulting him. And when we were doing the asking the questions, you know, she said, I wanted him to just open his mouth and say something.
Wow.
So that she can throw it back at him what he had done to her. So these are the only ways these children think they can express themselves. Some of them bedwet.
Really?
Yes. 10-year-old suddenly starts to bedwet.
Wow.
Because emotionally, they are so disturbed. Some of them, was doing well in school, first position, second position, and suddenly they are the last in class because they don't even want to go to school, especially when it has to do with sexual abuse, bullying, divorce happening in the homes.
What about domestic abuse?
Of course. Those are one of the things as marriage counselors we are always confronted with. Domestic abuse. Some of the children witness the violence between the parents.
Yeah.
And so they don't even know. For an adult, you say, oh, I have a problem. I know this is my friend. By the time I relate with this person, should be able to give me this or this, you know, advice. They don't have that option. They don't have that thought going. They don't know who to go to. So what they do, somehow, they fall into the wrong hands. Some of them have gone into substance abuse.
Yes.
Just to get away from that situation. So these are so many, we cannot count it. Okay, we can't, that these children face.
So now talking about parents and children, how do you think a parent can help their child who is going through or who has gone through trauma?
Parents have a lot of work to do, but most times they don't understand it. First and foremost, we need to be sure that the environment is safe for the child.
Okay.
You know, for example, a violent home, we need to make sure that violence stops. For a child who has been abused sexually, that child should be taken out of that environment. But most times we don't do that. We still want the child to. So that feeling of it will soon happen again is always there. So parents need to change the environment, make sure the environment has changed for a healthy one. Then secondly, we need to be, like I said, empathetic with the child. We need to make sure that the child feels loved. And then say to the child, I understand you. It wasn't your fault. Whatever has happened to you wasn't your fault. Because you know that guilt feeling, that sense of worthlessness.
Yes.
That maybe I did this, I did that. And sometimes we do it. As parents, we say, but why were you there? Why did you do this? And so that guilt feeling follows the child everywhere, like a shadow. So as parents, we need to be close to the child, closer than before. Affirm to the child that, look, we love you. It wasn't your fault. Whatever has happened, it wasn't your fault. Bullying wasn't your fault. The other person was just being a bully.
Okay, now for you, speaking about bullying now, I know a couple of times the topic has come up. So for children who have been bullied or who are being bullied, what are some ways that they can actually stand up to their to people who bully them? Because it's not about, I know sometimes children, they go to school and they just say, oh, look at your ugly hair or your this or that. So is it the role of the parents to actually put confidence or give them some kind of self-esteem to work with?
Yes.
So it's the parents?
Yes, it's in the hands of the parents. For me, like I say, when teaching parenting to children, what system of parenting are you showing to the child? If you are an authoritarian parent, where in the home the child cannot say anything, you've already boxed the child in for other people to say something on them. But if you are that kind of parent that is, you know, let's sit down to logical reasoning. What is your take? Why did you do this? This is a consequence for what you have done. You'll find that child has this assertive nature that when they go out and they are being bullied, the child will be able to defend or stand for what they think is right. So the parents have a very key role to play. And there's this saying that I always say to people, tell your child and to parents, whatever form of training you give your child, that's the kind of training the child will give to his child, his own self.
So like
his own self, not
his own self.
Yes.
Oh really? I thought it was like
you love your child. You show love. You show confidence that I trust you. That child will end up loving himself first, and you can't give what you don't have. So if the child loves himself, he will then love a child that he gives birth to.
Nice. Don't go anywhere. When we come back from the short break, we'll continue our discussion on trauma.
Oh, very, very true. Yeah, I think so. You know, a lot of the memories, my childhood memories, memories of my youngest days, I still look back on them, and they are part of the things that inspire me presently. And sometimes I do some kind of introspection, and at those points I go back to them. I see them as a pool of inspiration, a pool of energy, because those are sincere desires. Those experiences, those encounters where they formed my sincere desires in life. Those associations, those interactions, they made up my sincere desires and what, you know, I could say that I can now or want to die for presently.
Welcome back. This is still Catholic Faith Forum, and we're discussing healing from childhood trauma. So for adults, I know that maybe they've had some issues, and I've also read on some maybe psychopaths here, like Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and so many other psychopaths. And they always claim that because they had some issues as children, as a result of that, it affected their adulthood, and they started killing people, and they never saw any need to love their fellow humans. So what can you say about people like this? Do you think that your childhood can affect your adulthood?
Definitely. Like I said, teach your children how to love, and then they will end up loving. Childhood traumas affect the adults. You know, we have different theories to buttress all of this. Take for one, when the father of psychoanalysis, Sigmund Freud, he said that there are different stages of growth. And then if you don't function properly at one stage, you'll be fixated. And then that fixation brings out sometimes a negative outcome. For example, at the first stage, which is the oral stage, when there is fixation there, because all pleasure and stimulation comes, you know, has to do with the mouth.
The mouth, yeah.
Now, if there is fixation, the adult grows up to be someone who ends up smoking or biting the nails.
Okay.
Or picking the nails, sucking we see adults who suck. Forgetting that they are even in the presence of people. It's because of that fixation. So when you find psychopaths like that, it is true. The experiences from childhood defines their adulthood. But, you know, if that adult knows that what they are doing is wrong, and they have that motivation to want to change. So that is where there's a difference. The motivation factor. Do I want to change? Now, if I want to change, I would work towards that change.
So that brings me to my next question. Do you think people can heal from trauma? And how can they do that?
People heal from trauma.
Okay, so it's not a lasting thing.
It is not. It is not. But
So
some
how-
are more chronic. Like we said, if you have a complex situation
Or
the
recurrent,
the chronic kind, then the counselor who is taking you has to be a professional who can diagnose that this is what is wrong. Could it be something that he has to refer to a psychiatric doctor? When it is referred to a psychiatric doctor, then you know that they have to go buy drugs. But if you do not need to refer to psychiatric doctors, then there are different kinds of intervention that you can use for these people. And then I tell you truly, they can heal if that motivation factor.
So is it like a personal thing?
It's a personal.
If I want to heal, is it my thing, or do I have to still seek external help?
First and foremost, this is your thing. You have to make that decision. Nobody makes a decision for you, because you cannot take the horse to the river and still put water in the mouth. So you have to personally want to change. And then the people around you, it might not be, now you're an adult, it might not be your parents,
Exactly.
your friends, maybe a spouse, a loved one that would help you. They are the fundamental helping hands around you, you know, like a primary source. Then when you go to the counselor, whatever the counselor is asking you to do, those other people too can back you up. But first and foremost, that decision has to come from the
you.
person. And not only the decision, the optimism that whatever the counselor is going to give to you would work. That hope. Because if you're not optimistic, you have this negative, pessimistic feeling that it may not work. Let me just go.
And even patience.
But of course, it's a process.
Yes.
It's a process. Some of these intervention models take 6 months. Some take 2
Wow.
years, depending on the kind
Of trauma. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming on this show today. I really learned a lot, and I'm sure that my viewer out there would have taken a lot of knowledge from this particular episode. I hope to invite you some other day, and I hope you really want to come to our set again.
Will do. I love the way you've asked those questions, and we hope the viewers out there too will learn one or two from all
Definitely, they will. Thank you so much. Thank you for sticking with us to the end of the show. We're not going anywhere until we go over to Know Your Faith. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Know Your Faith series. I am Collins, and today we'll be picking up from our previous episode. On the previous episode of Know Your Faith series, we talked about addictions and how to handle them. We talked about sexual addiction in the previous episode, and on today's episode, we'll be talking about substance addiction. Well, before we go forward, it's important that we know that there is a difference between substance abuse and addiction. The abuse is the illegal use of substance, while the addiction is the continuous use without control. And on today's episode, I'll be sharing with you tips on how to handle this addiction. So the first, like I said in the previous episode really, is to actually admit that there is a problem. Because if you can't admit that, then you've not really gotten anywhere. You need to admit that there is a problem and that you need to fix it. Number two is be accountable to someone. It really helps when you join a group, people who have been through similar situations, maybe whatever it is, drug addicts, alcohol addicts, people who have gone through that phase and somehow have come out very, very fine. It helps when you share your story and they are able to relate. Another is to actually exercise. Now, this is particular for substance abuse because it helps a lot. You know, it gives you that physical strength. In a way, is a way to put it. You know, it gives you certain things that you can do physically, rather than, you know, it's always coming from a point of you feeling down or some sort of depression. So exercise and physical workouts really helps out a lot. Another point is to break the habit. There are always triggers to addictions. So it's one thing for you to be able to identify the triggers and then try as much as possible to break them or stay away from them. Another point is to try cognitive behavioral therapy. It's like I said, it's when you're able to identify the triggers, or maybe if you realize that you turn to alcohol when your club loses, maybe something that puts you into depression, then you have to try as much as possible not to watch the match anymore. It might be hard, but it's something that you have to try as much as possible to do. You try to control your own behavior. And finally, try as much as possible to discover a new hobby, something that keeps you going, something that you actually love, and that you can always turn to when the cravings come, or the temptations. Try and find something that you really love, and that can, for example, if you actually love watching football, but you know that when you do this you get depressed, why don't you try playing instead? It might not give you exactly the same thing, but you have something really, really close. So getting a hobby really helps a lot. And finally, I think this is something that you actually need to do. Probably just sit down and write down the harmful effects that this substance has on you. Whether it's, just write it down. You'd be amazed to get to a point where you realize that it's really hurting you and you just have to stop. So every time you feel like you want to go back, look at the paper again and check yourself. If you realize that you don't want to have kidney failure or liver, whatever it is, you have to stop. And this is something that really helps. It pushes you a long way, and it really helps you to reduce or help you handle this addiction. So that's it for today, guys. On the 2 episodes, I hope that you've been able to get tips on how to handle addictions. I'm not telling you they'll be very easy, but it's something that can really help you if you put in the effort. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share this content to as many people as you can. And until I come your way next time, be bold and be Catholic.
Welcome back. Thank you so much, Know Your Faith team, for that. You can always support our show by sponsoring us, and you can do that by reaching out to the number on the screen, or simply send an email to us via opmediang@gmail.com. Also reach out to us on our social media platforms at CFF on TV. Also reach out to us on our social media platforms at CFF on TV. You can also join our chat room on Tuesdays by 7 p.m. on Instagram at CFF on TV with the hashtag CFF chatroom, with the hashtag CFF chatroom on Tuesdays by 7 p.m. And our saint for the week is Saint Bonaventure. He's known as a seraphic doctor, was born at Bagnoregio in the Lazio region of central Italy in 1221. He received the name of Bonaventure in consequence of an exclamation of St. Francis of Assisi when, in response to the pleading of a child's mother, the saint prayed for John's recovery from a dangerous illness, and foreseeing the future greatness of the little John, cried out, "O Buonaventura, O good fortune." So the meaning of Bonaventure means good fortune. At the age of 22, St. Bonaventure entered the Franciscan order. Having made his vows, he was sent to Paris to complete his studies under the celebrated Dr. Alexander of Hales, an Englishman and a Franciscan. After the latter's death, he continued his course under his successor, John of Rochelle. In Paris, he became the intimate friend of the great St. Thomas Aquinas. He received the degree of doctor together with St. Thomas Aquinas, ceding to his friend against the latter's inclination the honor of having it first conferred upon him. Like St. Thomas, he enjoyed the friendship of the Holy King St. Louis. At the age of 35, he was chosen general of his order and restored a perfect calm where peace had been disturbed by internal dissensions. He did much for his order and composed the life of St. Francis. He also assisted at the translation of the relics of St. Anthony of Padua. He was nominated Archbishop of York by Pope Clement IV, but he begged not to be forced to accept that dignity. Gregory X obliged him to take upon himself a greater one, that of Cardinal and Bishop of Albano, one of the 6 suffragan sees of Rome. Before his death, he abdicated his office of General of the Franciscan Order. He died while he was assisting at the Second Council of Lyons on July 5th, 1274. Thank you so much for being here. I want to thank my guests once more for being here. You know, you can always watch this episode and other episodes on our YouTube channel at Dominican Media Presents. You will also reach out to us on our Instagram handle, Twitter, and Facebook at CFF on TV. Till we'll come your way next time. Keep being saints in jeans and shirts. Bye.